Venters, in the early 2000s, your boy was really addicted to poker. I loved poker. I actually played in the World Series of Poker for a couple of different years, the different tournaments they have down there. And I actually made the money. It was a heck of a good time. It was a lot of fun, a lifelong memory. But one of the things that happened back then is I became a Kenny Rogers fan because if you remember, one of his famous songs is The Gambler. Absolutely love that song. And when you look at Kenny back in the 80s and 90s, he's basically your classic silver fox, right? But if you looked at him the last 5 or 10 years of his life, it looked like he had one or two too many plastic surgeries. The reason I mention this is I was watching this video today on a new procedure that's been dubbed the Forever 35 facelift. Now this facelift apparently is a lot more subtle than the traditional facelift that Kenny Rogers took. And I don't know if you guys remember what Kenny Rogers looked like, but here's what he looked like back in the 80s, that classical look, right? And then here's what he looked like, you know, a couple years before he passed on. And if you look at his face, it kind of looks like it's been pulled. Well, apparently the difference between the Forever 35 facelift and the old school ones is instead of a pulling, you get more of a glide type aspect. And you know, it's interesting when the doctor said the word pull, and by the way, the doctor's name was Babek Azizadeh. He was the plastic surgeon he's basically doing a lot of these Forever 35 plastic surgeries on famous people. Some of the people that have gone through this have been Kris Jenner, Megan Fox, and even Rikki Lake. Here's a couple of their pictures. Now, when I look at their facelift, I must admit, it looks way more subtle. As a matter of fact, it's one of these things where when you walk into a room full of people that you haven't seen in a couple months, it gets you a lot of, wow, you look wonderful. What happened? What did you do? You know? And that's kind of the look that you want, right? And a couple of the people were even remarking, a couple of the people in the comments, excuse me, were even remarking that this Forever 35 facelift actually looks a lot better than when you go and get fillers or you go and get Botox. The only problem is, I believe if you go and get Botox, it's probably a couple $100. Maybe it gets as high as $1,000 if you've got wrinkles everywhere, right? But that sounds a lot less than, get this, about $150,000 to $160,000. Nobody can afford this. The reason I mention that is they were kind of making it sound like this is a surgery that anybody can do. I don't think anybody could do this at all. As a matter of fact, I think maybe 1 out of 100 people might be able to afford something like this. Here's my question to you. If you had a before and after picture and you knew exactly how young and youthful you were gonna look, and you knew that you would literally look like you did when you were 35, would you be willing to pay $150,000 for it? Now keep in mind, I'm assuming that you can probably finance this. Would you be willing over a 10-year period to pay for this procedure if it really made you look young? Here's what I think's gonna happen. I think it's gonna make you look 35 for about 2 or 3 years, and then you're probably gonna have to consistently pay, you know, probably 5 or 6 figures just to upkeep it. And there's certain parts of the human body that kind of betray you when it comes to your age. I always look at a person's neck. If their neck looks kind of like what's the thing on a rooster? The gizzard? What's that thing called? I remember once I was watching Seinfeld and there was a woman that had one of these things. It's that red gnarly looking thing on a rooster.
It's my goiter, isn't it?
What, did you say goiter? What goiter?
What is that thing? Anyway, sometimes as we age, regardless if you're female or male, sometimes we end up getting that crepey looking neck, right? Another thing that people were mentioning in the comments is that it doesn't matter how young your face looks, you're still going to act like a 70-year-old, and people are going to notice that, which is really true. Your age really shows through your actions and how much energy and sunshine you have. That's why I think it's actually better to take a walk each and every day. If you have another part of the human anatomy that you think betrays a person's age, let us know down below. And don't say, Jesse, your pee-pee betrays your age. You know, nobody wants to hear that stuff. Okay, check out this lady. She's 55-year-old Wendy Hecht. Okay, this is what she looked like before the procedure. To me, it looks like she has some healthy baby fat on her 60-year-old face, right? 55-year-old face. But I think she looks fine. There's the after picture with all the procedures that she had done, because I think she had a couple more in addition to the face. Her grand total came to about $180,000. And I must say, she looks like a pretty 55-year-old woman. I don't get the vibes that she's 35, but maybe you see things slightly different. If she told you she was 35, would you give her credit? Or if you were guessing and it was for $1 million, how old do you think she actually looks? Every day I shave my face. I know you're thinking, Jesse, you barely shave. I know, but every day that I shave my face, I feel like I see a couple more gray hairs. And I think that's how we ultimately age. What if you found out that every single day you lost 2 or 3 brown hairs that were replaced with gray hairs? And slowly but surely on a day-to-day basis, you don't really see much change. But over the course of weeks, months, and years, you slowly become salt and peppery. As we take that into year 4, 5, and 6, pretty soon there's less pepper and more salt. I think that's how aging works. And I also think it kind of works that way when it comes to wrinkles. At first, you crease your forehead when you're excited, and before you know it, it looks like you've got a forehead full of wrinkles all the damn time. Even when you're not excited. All right, at Quick Take says the hands never lie. So I mentioned the goiter. I think it's called a goiter. Some people have a goiter.
What goiter?
And in my favorite show of all time, Seinfeld, do you guys remember the goiter episode? That shit was hilarious. Some of us get the goiter, and then some of us get hands that look like they're made of loose plastic material, right? That crepey look. Those hands never lie. Jane Fonda, I think she's a really pretty girl, or pretty woman, excuse me. I know she's like 75 or 80, but she's got one of those faces that is just a really pretty face. But I always felt like her body still looked like an elderly woman's body. Same with Sophia Loren. They're both beautiful looking women, but you can still tell that they're, elderly women. Lana Investor says, let's normalize aging and a real face. Okay, so let's bring back up Kenny Rogers. By the way, if you ever ate at a restaurant called Kenny Rogers Roosters, let me know. They had the absolute best chocolate velvet cake ever. I liked that restaurant. I thought it was a hell of a restaurant. But if you look at him, right, let's put his face up there. Don't you think if he would have just went with the natural look, he would have actually looked better? I think he would have been better set just not to spend a penny and just let us appreciate what he looked like in old age rather than that pulled back look. I think I'm going to put a check mark in the natural box for this reason. All the people that got a facelift, especially the famous ones, they all did it hoping to defy time and to look younger than they were, right? But the crazy thing is we already knew how old they were. I think they would have all looked better if they would have skipped the facelift. Somewhere along the line, they all convinced themselves that that stretched out look actually looked better than just a grandfatherly look or a grandmotherly look. I've never looked at a wrinkled old grandma or grandpa and thought, these people look disgusting. I just kind of assumed the wrinkles were part of what made grandma and grandpa have some charm. Do you agree? Michelle TK says 180,000, that's not for everyone. You know, there's someone out there that'll get you approved for a 10-year loan at $250 a month, right? So when people sell it to you like that, imagine looking like you did when you were 35 for $250 a month. Would you be open and willing to do that? I think a lot of people would. Now, are you going to get it for $250 a month? No, it would probably be closer to $400 or $500 a month. But again, people will do it if you make it available. Dad from Texas says facelifts look way better than fillers and Botox, in my opinion. You know what I think looks better than all of that? Losing some weight naturally by drinking water, walking daily with us preferably, and avoiding sugar. If you actually lose 10 or 15 pounds, I think that lady that we showed the pictures of, that Wendy Hecht, do you guys agree that she probably would have gotten the same results by losing 15 pounds, right? Maybe she loses 15 pounds of fat and maybe she goes to the gym and gains 3 or 4 or 5 pounds of 4 or 5 pounds of muscle. She probably could have saved herself 180 grand. One Wish says, why talk about it when the average person could never do it? We learned yesterday that Delta Airlines actually makes more money off of the first class passengers now than they do off the tickets sold for the rest of the airplane. So when you ask the question, why talk about this? The average person can't afford 180K. They're not looking for the average person. They're looking for the person that just secured that 6-figure job. They're looking for that person that just retired and now they have a 401k that's, providing them a lot of extra income, I'm guessing. And I think they're actually going for the rich person because, again, they can make so much money off of the wealthy and successful that they don't need the rest of our money. They really don't. As a matter of fact, this is really just an ad, a sales ploy. They probably paid ABC News money for them to do this little expose on them. And just because they say it looks more subtle and better, aren't they really admitting that the old way they did it looked kind of like shit? See, that's the problem with sales. You always try to make the next thing look good, but if you make the next thing look too good, you're really just admitting how bad the old way looked. I wouldn't do it. Just grow old gracefully. Unless you're super rich. I mean, honestly, what if you were worth $1 million or $1 billion and you could easily afford it? Why not? Do what you want to do. Ira Lee says, in Turkey, the same procedure costs $5,000. I would not do anything in Turkey. There's a procedure out there called turkey teeth. I don't think they call it that, but that's what Americans call it. And it's where they actually will grind down your perfectly good teeth into little dots just so that they can put fake dentures on. And the dentures that they put on look big, bulky, and goofy. And again, that's something that Turkey will do for $2 or $3 grand. If you get veneers out here in the U.S., that same set of teeth could cost you 50 or 60 grand. But again, I wouldn't do it. No way. I'll just take my regular teeth as long as I can. And if I have to get dentures as I get older, I'll get dentures. And you might say, oh, I won't even do that, Jesse. I'll just go without dentures. Well, dentures actually serves to help you maintain your jaw structure. Because apparently if you lose your teeth, your jaw will slowly but surely kind of look like it disintegrates and your mouth will kind of change through time and it can be bad for you. So don't be against dentures. Dentures are better than nothing. Triangle Square says, in about a decade, a 100-year-old will be able to walk out looking like Taylor Swift. All right, that's interesting. Let's say health-wise, they can make you as a 100-year-old feel just as healthy as you did when you were, let's say, 35. And let's say you get this procedure done in the future, mind you, and all of a sudden you step out of the office and you literally are a 100-year-old that just looks and acts and feels like a 35-year-old. Would you have a problem dating somebody like that? And if you did that, would you date somebody that was 35 or 40 if you were 100 years old? That would be crazy. Hey, for $100,000, if you could have a surgery that made you look 35 forever, would you do it for $100,000? It's too much. Have a good walk. And that's the gist of it. I think when people hear 100,000, they automatically know, oh, this is for somebody other than me. And that's how I feel about it too. I would not date a person that looked 35 if I knew they were 100. There's something really kind of gross about that. Tell me you agree with me. But here's the thing. It's easy to say that you agree with me. Now imagine there's actually a drop-dead gorgeous 35-year-old in front of you that happens to be 100, you know? And when you're talking about President Trump and President Biden, you know, they're thinking about FDR, and those are the presidents from back in their day. That would be something. I know some of you would. And you never know. You can't help who you like. But wouldn't that be embarrassing? How do you tell that to the family? Like, hey, I met this really beautiful girl. How old is she? She's old. How old? 100 years old. Get out of here. Anyway, the reason I walk is not necessarily because I want to defy time when it comes to looks. I really walk because I want to stay mentally present as I age. And one of the real advantages of a walk is it gives you time to think. Have you ever thought about this? There's so much noise in our lives that even when you're sitting in an office, we're not really focusing. We're looking at our cell phone. We're listening to people in the background. We're trying to pay attention to things like the weather and the score on the game, right? Sometimes you need a place where you just can focus on breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, putting one foot in front of the other, and just walking. And this time of year is incredibly perfect to start that walking routine. If you watch any videos on walking, you'll quickly find that even if it doesn't give you the body of an Adonis, and even if it doesn't feel like it's doing much on the outside, on the inside, it really is performing some magic for your body, because if you walk, it's almost like your body is naturally primed to live longer. People that walk tend to live longer. Can I prove that? No, but I've watched videos that look pretty convincing. And every single doctor out there will tell you that it might not be a bad idea to take a 45-minute walk each and every day. Where I come in is I'm willing to take that daily walk with you. And in addition to walking, I'm going to urge you to give up the soda and the coffee and all that other jazz for good old water. If you and I drink water, walk every day, and try to cut back on the sugar, we're going to be in damn good shape, and it's not going to take very long at all. So if you've been thinking about doing this and you just needed a little push, I'm that push. I'm what you need. I'll walk here with you every single day, and so will Sean, so will Mala, so will Terry the Terrify, AZ Raccoon, Micah Stubblefield. We all will. So again, if you're new to us and you're starting a walking routine, let us know down below in the comments. And you got this. I can do this. You can do this. We can do this. Let's do this together. Hit subscribe, hit the like button, make sure you hype this video, and come back again tomorrow. We'll start that walking routine together. Have a good night.